Picture the last time you felt truly alone. Not the pleasant kind of solitude you chose, the other kind. The kind that sits on your chest at 2 in the morning when the notifications stop and the silence gets loud, and you realize that no one, not a single person, would notice if you simply disappeared for a day. That feeling is not weakness. It is not a personality flaw. It is one of the oldest alarm systems in the human body, firing exactly as it was designed to fire. And if you ignore it long enough, it will kill you. Not metaphorically, literally, statistically, measurably, kill you faster than smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
The science on this has been building for decades. You just were never told how serious it was.
So why does loneliness hurt so much? Why does it feel physical, like pressure behind the eyes, like something missing from the center of your chest? The answer starts not in modern psychology, but in the African savanna, roughly 200,000 years ago, where your ancestors lived or died based entirely on one thing: whether they were part of a group.
Alone on the savannah meant dead. Not eventually, soon. A single human without a tribe had no one to watch for predators while they slept, no one to share food when the hunt failed, no one to help when illness or injury struck. The humans who survived were the ones whose brains treated social disconnection as a 5-alarm emergency. The ones who felt loneliness so acutely that they were driven, almost physically compelled, back toward the group.
You are descended from those people. Every single one of your ancestors for 200,000 years was wired to feel social pain as viscerally as physical pain. And that wiring is still in you, intact, fully operational. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent over 20 years studying loneliness and what it does to the human body. What he found was not what anyone expected. Loneliness, he discovered, does not just make you feel bad, it rewires your brain. Chronically lonely people show measurable changes in brain function, specifically in the regions that process threat. The lonely brain is a brain on high alert, scanning every interaction for signs of rejection, interpreting ambiguous social signals as hostile, withdrawing preemptively to avoid further pain. It becomes a trap. The loneliness makes you defensive. The defensiveness pushes people away. The isolation deepens. The brain dials up the threat response further, and the cycle continues, tightening like a knot.
But the effects go further than the brain, much further.
Cacioppo and his colleagues found that loneliness triggers a cascade of biological changes that reach all the way down to the level of your genes. Specifically, it activates something called the CTRA, the conserved transcriptional response to adversity. This is an ancient genetic program that evolved to prepare the body for physical threat. It ramps up inflammation, the body's frontline defense against wounds and infection, while simultaneously suppressing the immune response that fights viruses. Because on the ancestral savanna, if you were alone, the most likely threat was a predator, which meant wounds, which meant you needed inflammation. Not a virus. Viruses were a social problem. You caught those from people. Alone meant injured, so the body prepared for injury. The problem is that your body cannot tell the difference between being alone on an African savanna and being alone in a studio apartment in a city of 8 million people. The genetic program fires anyway. And chronic inflammation, sustained over months and years, is one of the most destructive forces in the human body. It accelerates heart disease. It promotes cancer. It degrades the brain. It accelerates aging at the cellular level. Researchers have found that the telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes that shorten as you age, shorten faster in chronically lonely people. Loneliness does not just feel like aging, it causes it. And then there are the numbers. Julianne Holt-Lundstad, a professor at Brigham Young University, conducted a landmark meta-analysis in 2015, pulling together data from over 3 million people across 70 studies. The conclusion was stark. Social isolation increases the risk of early death by 26%. Loneliness increases it by 29%. Living alone increases it by 32%. And all three of these figures are larger than the mortality risk associated with obesity, larger than physical inactivity, comparable to or exceeding smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Holt-Lundstad testified before the United States Senate about these findings. She called loneliness a public health crisis. The world largely moved on. But the numbers did not change.
Now, consider the scale of what this means, because loneliness is not a rare condition. It is not something that only happens to elderly people in nursing homes or hermits in mountain cabins. A 2018 survey by health insurer Cigna found that nearly half of all Americans reported sometimes or always feeling alone. Almost half said they felt that no one knows them well. Generation Z, the most digitally connected generation in human history, reported the highest loneliness scores of any age group.
More connected than ever, more lonely than ever. Those two facts sit side by side like a paradox that refuses to resolve.
And here is the counterintuitive part. The number of social connections you have matters far less than you might think. Cacioppo's research consistently found that it is not the quantity of relationships, but the quality of felt connection that determines whether the loneliness alarm fires. You can be surrounded by people at a party and feel the loneliness signal screaming. You can be physically alone in a cabin and feel none of it because the connections you have feel secure and real.
The brain does not count friends. It measures belonging.
Which means that the solution to the loneliness crisis is not simply getting people to spend more time together. It is not downloading another social app. It is not attending more networking events. It is cultivating the specific experience of being known, of mattering to someone, of having your presence register in another person's life in a way that is genuine and irreplaceable. That is a much harder thing to engineer, but it is also the only thing that works. Cacioppo spent the last years of his life arguing that loneliness should be treated with the same urgency as any other major public health threat, not because it makes people sad, though it does, but because it is quietly shortening millions of lives in ways that no one can see because the mechanism is invisible. There is no cough. There is no tumor. There is only a body slowly burning itself down in response to an ancient alarm that was never designed to stay on this long.
Your ancestors felt that alarm and ran toward the firelight, toward the voices, toward the people. The signal that drove them is the same signal in you. It never went away. It never weakened. The next time you feel it, at 2 a.m. when the silence gets loud, you might understand it differently now. Not as evidence of your inadequacy, not as a character flaw to be managed or medicated or scrolled away,
but as the oldest voice in the human nervous system telling you something true.
You were never meant to do this alone. And the last time you felt truly alone, your body already knew that. It was just waiting for you to listen.